Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the regular city council meeting for June the 4th. I'd like to ask everybody in the audience who can to stand as we start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Agenda additions, deletions, and amendments. Mr. Esteve, you wanted to pull off item...
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
Aye.
Actually, so yeah, there were 4 items we wanted to change. F, H, I, and J. Councilman Wolfley and I wanted to rip off the
Okay.
consent agenda item and put them under new business.
H, and J will become C under new business.
Thank you.
Hearing no objection. Do anybody sign up for citizen participation? Okay, as I call your name, if you would come up to the microphone and identify yourself for the folks at home. You keep your comments in 3 or 4 minutes, I'd appreciate it. Linda Tucker, welcome, ma'am. Good to see you.
Good evening. How are you guys all doing?
Well,
So I'm going to give you a brief history of the United States of America. We are a democratic society. We are a constitutional democracy, which means the job of the government, first and foremost, is to make sure laws are enforced safely and protect the civil rights of our residents. Being a representative government means that every person who votes has the right to equal access to the government. As it stands right now, according to the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1972, the city of Bowie is out of compliance. You do not provide closed captioning for hearing impaired on the website nor on previous videos. And what I also find is distressing to me is that the minutes that are produced as of right now are 3 months behind. You guys have held meetings almost every week for the past 3 months. The minutes that are on the website are March 9th. So citizens who are hearing impaired don't have access to the audio of these meetings, and whatever written documentation it has is 3 months outdated. And what you call minutes, I call a checklist. It's after action items. There is no discussion about what's taking place at these meetings for those who are hearing impaired. An example, we've held meetings in this hall where we've had over 40 speakers, 3-hour meetings, 2 pages of minutes. How is that truly accessible government? And I will tell you, if you don't want to see it from a standpoint of doing right by the citizens, let's just call it what it is. This city receives money from the federal government, the state of Maryland, and Prince George's County in the form of grants. Those grants can be revoked. The money can be withheld if you are not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I am approaching you as my elected officials, as city council, to rectify this problem immediately. Part of being a democracy means everyone has equal rights, not just a select few. Those with disabilities even more need our protection and our help to ensure that their rights are being reserved. And if for no other reason, if you want to ignore the fact that this is the right thing to do, ignore the fact that we have money on the table. Let's go with the fact that in 17 months, each one of you is going to be up for re-election. And we will remember as citizens who is looking out for our rights, who is protecting us, and who is really saying, I stand up for the democracy of this country. And I'm looking to all of you to fix this problem now. Not in 6 months, not in a year, now. Our residents who are hearing impaired have gone long enough without fair access to our government. Thank you.
I'd ask staff to review this and find out where we are in terms of compliance and give us a recommendation for bringing compliance at the earliest possible date. No objection? Okay, that's all I have to sign up to speak under citizen participation. City boards and committees, Ms. Glass?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I have a certificate of appointment for Mr. Tony Nichols. Is he here?
You want to move your
Come forward.
appointment?
And I would like to move that he is hereby appointed as a member of the Community Recreation Committee.
Moved and second. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Do you have another one?
I do. And I have a second certificate of appointment. I would like to make a motion that Ms. Natalia Aguilar will be appointed as a member of the Arts Committee by the Bowie City Council.
Moved and second by Dr. Trout. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Mr.
Mayor?
Wolfley?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Monica Roebuck to the Education Committee, please.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. If those three people will join us up here tonight. Welcome. Join us up here. You can take a picture, but I need you to face me at some point. All right. So I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand, and after I say aye, if you would follow with your name, and then we'll follow along. I. Name, please. Do swear or affirm
Do swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will be faithful
and that I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland,
and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and support the Constitution and the laws thereof,
and that I will,
as I will,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of
execute the office of
member of the Education Committee,
Member of the Education Committee.
member of the CRC, and member of the Arts Committee. I'm sorry?
No, you're CRC.
CRC, okay, all right, I got it, okay, all right, I got it. According to the constitutional laws of this state.
according to the Constitution.
Congratulations, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Tony. Thank you, guys. Yes, we can get it. Yeah, if you guys want to get a picture, yeah, why don't we just consolidate up here? You still look happy. You know this is the first night of your 14-year term. Hey, thank you. Okay, just a short comment under council comments. On behalf of all of us, I wanted to thank staff for the outstanding job they did on the entire Memorial Day weekend programs, and then this past weekend. I don't know how you did it, but you held off all the rain on Bowie Fest, and that turned out to be a great day. So very large crowd, everybody seemed to be having a good time. So if you would extend our congratulations to all the staff members that worked so hard to get that thing done.
I shall, sir.
Well, very well. City manager's report?
Mr. Mayor, at present, we know this is the time where everybody gets their performance evaluations for the city, so all of our managers and employees are engaged in the performance evaluation process right now for the next couple of weeks. That's it.
Take it. All right, council, you have an amended consent agenda, items A, B, C, D, E, G. Okay, and the rest will be pulled off. Do I have a motion for those? Moved in second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Old business, Resolution 2818, annexation of Bowie Baysock Stadium.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. For the record, I'm Joe Meinert, City Planning Director. Before you this evening is Resolution R 2818. This resolution was introduced by council for public hearing at your meeting of April 16th, and the hearing tonight has been properly advertised. This resolution is a resolution of annexation involving the Bowie Baysock Stadium, otherwise known as Prince George's Stadium, and the adjacent parcels owned by the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. The approximate acreage of the annexed area is about 400 acres, and it goes along the south side of Governor Bridge Road as well. This council did pass a resolution on March 5th, R 1118, approving an agreement letter between the city and Prince George's County regarding the emissions and amusement taxes generated by the activities at Prince George's Stadium. So the county and both the county and the Park and Planning Commission are in support of the annexation proposal. So this evening it's a public hearing, and staff recommends that council approve Resolution R 2818 for the purpose of annexing the Bowie Baysock Stadium, as well as parcels 5, 6, 12, and 24, as shown on tax map 56, and a portion of the Governor Bridge Road right-of-way into the corporate limits of the city. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you. May I have anybody sign up to speak?
No, sir.
Declare public hearing to be. Any questions of staff? Mr. Stev?
Hey, Mr. Minor, thank you for the presentation tonight. What are the anticipated costs of the city's responsibilities for providing public safety services for this new property we're annexing?
Councilman Esteve, as part of the annexation process, you did approve a separate resolution, the annexation plan, which sets forth the extension of city services to the annexed area. The question about public safety and in particular police is that the Prince George's County and the Park and Planning Police essentially will provide the police service to this area because all of those properties are owned by the commission.
Gotcha. So in annexing the property, the city will not have to expend any additional significant police resources for the Bowie Baysock Stadium?
No.
That's correct.
Okay, just want to be clear about that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to, or regarding Resolution 2818?
Make a motion that we adopt Resolution R 2818, the annexation of the Bowie Baysock Stadium.
Second by Mr. Gardner. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Adoption of Ordinance 518, amending the adopted budget for fiscal year July 17 to provide funds for the purchase of land in Old Bowie. Who's handling it?
Good evening, Council. Byron Matthews, Finance Department. During the last council meeting, Mr. Minor brought to your attention the purchase of land from the Maryland State Highway Administration. Looking at our budget during that time, we were underfunded in that line item. Thus, Council needs to appropriate an additional $85,500 to secure the purchase of the land. Land cost is $99,000. Ordinance 518 allows for that additional appropriation, and we ask that the council accept that.
Okay, anybody sign up to speak?
No, sir.
Declare public hearing, please. Questions? Mr. Stebbs, in your district?
Hey, Mr. Matthews, thanks for joining us again tonight. You thought you're off the hook. Total cost is still $99,000, right? That hasn't changed?
That's correct.
It's just a mere matter of making sure the funds are in the right place?
Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews.
Any other questions? Mr. Stebbs?
I'd like to make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance, and we have a million ordinances, so let me actually make sure I quote the ordinance number correctly. Ordinance O-5-18.
All right, moved and second by Mr. Wolfley. Any questions on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. New business, Bowie BIC, Bowie Incubator. Welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you very, very much. Lisa Smith, Executive Director of the Bowie Business Innovation Center. And I always enjoy this annual opportunity to provide a briefing to the Mayor and Council. I'm really pleased this evening that I'll be joined by our new board chair, Mark Lawrence, the founder and CEO of Incubate. You hear me talk very frequently about what Bowie BIC is up to and has been doing. And we thought that this year it might be an opportunity to do something just a little bit different. And so we thought that it was high time that you heard from our companies.
My name is Cass Parker. I'm the CEO and System Architect of Long-Term Care Management Systems. We are an IT and managed services company. We have been with Bowie for the last year, and we are very appreciative of what they've done for us. Since then, we have had the opportunity to work with lots of our partners in the long-term care industry, Currently, we have 70 assisted living facilities, which represents over 700 bed capacities that we are currently working in Anne Arundel and Prince George's County. Thank you very much, Bowie Big, for all of the support that you have given us, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
I'm Keisha Dempsey, owner of Trinity Empowerment. Trinity Empowerment has been at the Bowie Big for the last 2 years. We have taken advantage of some of the resources they have on site, such as their Maryland Women's Business Center, their Procurement and Technical Assistance Center, and most recently, a personalized business coach. These services have been tremendous in allowing me to restate and regroup on how I want to grow my business, so I'm very grateful to you, Bowie Big, for your assistance.
Hi, I'm Marcellus Major, President and CEO of Avant-Garde Engineering. We're an information technology company, and we're a 4-year resident of the Bowie Big. We've really grown as a company, and now we're going after federal contracts. We were awarded our 8A contract vehicle, and recently we were awarded a IDIQ with the Small Business Administration. We really appreciate the Bowie Big for all its help. Thank you very much.
Hi, I am Ruben Rubio, and I'm the owner of OpsTech Alliance. And within 10 months, the Bowie Big has become an essential key for us to learn, to grow and run our business. We have grown from 20 to 50 employees. So thank you, Bowie Big, for all the support and guidance we got from you from day one.
Hi, my name is Ames Carey. My business is Food Resource, LLC. I've been at Bowie Big for just about a month now, and they've offered me access to various services such as marketing, legal advice, and allowed me to participate in the Dolphin Tank. Before I came here, I was working out of my house and really needed to get into an office space. Thanks, Bowie Big.
Hi, my name is Mark Lawrence. I'm the founder and managing principal of Incubate, which is a firm that seeks to connect underserved communities to opportunities to build more entrepreneurial ecosystems. I've been affiliated with the Bowie Big since 2015, joining the board, and I am the current board chair. The vision for the Bowie Big going forward is more of what you've seen and more of what you're accustomed to, but one of the accomplishments that I'd like to highlight is our ability to partner and work on folks and do more fee-for-service opportunities. So look out for it in the coming years. The Bowie Big is growing, and we'll be scaling, and you'll see more entrepreneurs located here in the city of Bowie and serving the broader Prince George's County.
Clearly, Bowie Big is a community, and it's the largest concentration of scale-up resources in Prince George's County and also in the city of Bowie. We are very fortunate to have been able to marshal a number of key resources, everything from mentoring to advising companies to actually having the physical infrastructure where companies can grow their businesses. You heard from our little video that we have a range of technologies represented by our companies, everything from health IT, cybersecurity, and staffing, project management. It really runs the gamut, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with a diverse group of companies. But what you really are interested in, I know, is the numbers. And so we have a good story for you here. And in just the last 11 months, we've taken stock of what our companies have been up to, and you can see some pretty dramatic increases from our clients and graduates, both on the jobs front and the revenue front. I can tell you, too, that on the entrepreneurs participating in our programs, about 45% of the entrepreneurs are Bowie residents. And so we are looking at over 400 entrepreneurs from Bowie who have been able to participate in our programs. By the same token, the jobs that are generated by our companies, based on what's reported by our companies, close to 90 of those jobs are for for Bowie city residents. We're operating, as you know now, in 2 locations. We have 2 of our graduates in the Bowie Big Next space, and we're very pleased with the progress that they're making. We're very, very happy to be able to report, too, that we've worked with 5 student interns from Bowie State University, and these are paid internships. Our counselors and advisors on site continue to be a growth area for us, and they provide immeasurable support for the companies at Bowie Big. The added value for the city really comes down to the kinds of companies that we work with. Sage Services was the very first company to locate at Ken Hill, and they are still at Ken Hill, and their business is growing steadily. They have a small group of employees now that are Bowie residents, and that has worked very, very well for them. Total Access Insurance also maintains offices there, so we continue to have two companies there. OpsTech Alliance, you heard from Ruby Rubio about his company. Half of the 30 jobs that he added are in Bowie and Prince George's County of those 30 jobs. And the new kid on the block that you heard talking, our food resources company, this is an area that we feel is going to experience some pretty dramatic growth with the way that the global food industry is going and the types of labeling requirements and the food science that underpins this company we find really very exciting. We have a responsibility to provide great services and support to Bowie State University, where we are located, and we are proud, as I said, to continue to have paid internships. Interestingly, we were able to work with graduate students this past semester, and very exciting for us, as our chairman mentioned, is new opportunities to partner with different players at Bowie State University, from the Maryland Center to faculty that are developing special new technology applications such as blockchain. And I'd like to ask our chairman if he would say a word here about where we're thinking we should be going.
Okay. I think a lot of it was covered in the video, and excuse my voice a little under the weather. But when we talk about the future of the BIC, it's being, so we have the model, we prove we can scale, we prove we can work with entrepreneurs. How do we become more strategic and really increase our impact on economic development? That comes with diversifying our client portfolio, looking at emerging industries, looking at the assets we have here in the city of Bowie and the assets that we have in the broader Prince George's County. How do we find, not necessarily just startups, but new and existing companies that we can attract to our services and help scale? And then for our existing clients, how do we highlight them more? So it's Lisa and I, we got them on the video as a first step, but how do you start to see more visibly the Bowie BIC clients and how they're increasing their impact, having them tell their own stories, provide their own metrics, because our success is really the success of our clients. And then the last one is how do we expand, right? We do a lot with little, and Lisa's done a phenomenal job over the 5 years, but how do we grow the organization? And that goes to that fee for service. How do we find new funding, and how do we have some new partnerships? So the next couple of slides are just some examples, and then we can just talk about them. So when we talk about growth sectors, cryptocurrency might be a bad word, but blockchain is the real technology. So there's a lot of interest, and there's a lot of residents and entrepreneurs in the city of Bowie that are experimenting with blockchain technology, whether it's mining currency in their garage or just speculating trading. There is a talent pool there that exists. And how do we provide them the services so that once the technology and the market matures, they can scale their businesses? So there's faculty involved, there's students, and there's actually local entrepreneurs that we are attracting to the Bowie BIC to have those conversations. At first it's with tech meetups, but we're also working on a think tank to support one of the professors at Bowie State, and also 1 or 2 strategic entrepreneurs that we're going to ask to apply and be members of the Bowie BIC. Next. Again, highlighting our clients, making sure that their stories are getting out. I don't know if you knew, Sage Services received the Governor's Award by Governor Larry Hogan this past March, and it recognized her excellence and success in her business in the community and the state. And the important word is the community, and that community is the Bowie community. And then the last one, right? So how do we pursue new revenue? So we have a relationship with TEDCO from a training and from a fee-for-service standpoint, but how do we get to their core business, which is actually allocating funds and getting new ways to bring more entrepreneurs to the market? And this specific program, the Core Connect, was really around the state of Maryland being notoriously not as well serving connecting large corporations with entrepreneurs. Because when you look at any sort of innovation or entrepreneurial or economic development ecosystem, large corporations play a part. So led by the Bowie BIC, University of Maryland, Incubate, we talked to TEDCO and said, hey, here's an opportunity, and they funded us. So we're in our first pilot right now. We're working with Northrop Grumman, and more interesting information to come. And the focus on this challenge is data analytics and cybersecurity. But the point I want to make here, this could be anything. It could be food tech, agri-tech. Because a lot of times when we talk about innovation and we talk about entrepreneurship, we immediately go to technology. But there's also other sort of what we say around the sustainable development goals around clean energy, clean water, and just sustainability that applies here as well. And again, as we said, is the new leadership. It's me, the chair, Sherman Ragland, who's, everyone should know if they don't. As a vice chair, Charlene Wade from Workforce Resources, and then Greg Busnick from Clifton Larson. And this just talks about our current funding base, which is a lot of the city of Bowie, obviously, the county, Bowie State, and we are building our relationship with TEDCO, and of course, all of the board members are fully committed and funding contributors to the BIC. And I think that's it.
We want to be invited back. We want to be invited back.
Ago, you guys were talking about ideas about doing this, and you've not only converted those ideas into brick and mortar and people and hundreds of jobs and millions of dollars worth of contracts for people, and providing a vehicle so that young entrepreneurs have an opportunity to meet with experienced people in the business world who can mentor them into the business, and then they in turn bring somebody else along following that. You've created an incredible chain, and your success is just amazing. So on behalf of all of us, I just want to congratulate you. You've done to employ, what we would say in my old neighborhood, you've done good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, questions? Mr. Wolfer?
Good evening. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate the presentation. It's very informative. A couple quick questions for you. Your space at Bowie State, what's the status of that? Is that resolved? Are you going to be there on a long-term basis? Yes.
Yes. We're
Okay.
working out the details, but the answer is yes.
Okay, great. Good to hear. You spoke to your goals of moving more towards a fee-based operation. What is the percentage right now of fee-based versus grant that you use for BIC's operations for revenue for you guys?
I would say, what was the percentage?
Well, not to sound like an attorney, but it depends when you mean fee-based. We, for example, have $16,000 worth of TEDCO funding this year, which is project-specific. So that is a kind of a fee
Sure,
in
absolutely.
the sense that, but it literally comes in and goes straight out for the specific vendor that we have chosen to use for that. The CoreProject project is a great example of a fee-for-service because that's actually a grant that we will bill against. And you could also argue that the city grant, we have requirements for that as well, reporting requirements, and we bill against that. So I guess I am not clear on what you mean exactly by fee for service, because probably 80% of what we do is fee for service.
Well, that's the answer. I mean,
Okay.
I would not consider the money that we provide as fee for service. That's too distant because I don't see us. I mean, we certainly benefit as a community, but it is not as if I'm purchasing some service or getting an asset or immediate tangible asset in return. But it's good to know that your money seemed to be moving towards the fees as the source for sustaining, because I would imagine that's the only way you can continue to grow.
Yeah, because national models is usually a 60-40 split, so 60% fee, 40% subsidized, and over time, depending on major funders and corporate. But yeah, we are moving towards getting to that model because we realize, funding and grants, they have lives, right?
Yeah.
They have recompense, and then you don't want to build your operation solely on that, because if you lose a grant, you lose the opportunity to serve the community that you're trying to support.
Okay, good. What's the total budget for BIC for any given fiscal year?
It's about $300,000.
Okay, excellent, very good, thank you. And quick question, Sage, what do they do?
They are a fascinating company. They are essentially a project management firm, but their principal spent 20 years working at NASA. And so she brings an engineer's focus to project management to social service environments, which has been just an amazing approach to take, and has gotten her many new clients because she brings a structure to that particular environment. She also continues to work on NASA contracts as well, but has branched out now to others in other federal agencies.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you both, Ms. Smith and Mr. Lawrence, for coming out this evening. I wanted to just say something before. Ms. Hopkins, the CEO and president for SAGE, she and I are very good friends. We went to college and high school, and wow, we grew up just a few blocks away from each other. So she's an incredible woman. She does a great job. She speaks very highly of the program, exceptionally highly of the program. I wanted to ask this question of you both. How many graduates or members of within the BIC community are actually providing services to either the city of Bowie as a vendor or the county as a vendor? Do you have any knowledge of that?
I know that SAGE, for example, has in the past had contracts with Prince George's County Department of Education. I think that at this point, she's probably the only one that has worked with the county. The other company's clients tend to be with federal agencies or with commercial operations.
Well, yeah, I personally would like to see some of those organizations doing work with and being a vendor to the city of Bowie. You know, they're homegrown here, rather than our always going outside of the region or the area looking for vendors to provide certain services. We can look in our own backyard and pull from those. And I would employ you to reaching out. There's John sitting in the back there, our economic development director, and perhaps teaming with them and maybe getting some of those guys loaded onto some of the services that we provide or need here in the city of Bowie, and definitely in the county as well. Yeah. So thank you again. Thank you both. Yeah, the city is open for business, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions? Well, we thank you very much for your presentation and all the good work that you've been doing. Keep at it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Item next, Bowie Green Team presentation.
Oh, Sue B.
And the winner of the subtle attire. Welcome, ma'am. It's good to see you.
Whoops. Mark told me how to do this, but I don't think I'm doing it right. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
First of all, good evening, everybody. I am Sue Livera. I chair the Green Team, and I want to begin by thanking you all for allowing me to give some information about how we're doing for this past year and what we have in the future. And I want to also thank Joe Meinert, who is, of course, the chair of the planning department, and it is his staff, Ashley Armentrout and Tiffany Wright, who we couldn't do anything without them. So I'm very appreciative of them as well. I'm going to start off by saying, oops, had the wrong slide. Oops. Oh dear, I'm not really good at this. Oh. Well, we're just going to go through this, all right? We'll take it as it comes. Sure. First of all, somebody asked me what I was doing in this outfit and what I was, that I looked like a bee. Courtney, I'm so glad you said the word. She said pollinator. I said, well, I'm representing all the pollinators. This is a person who was in this room a little while ago, who you just inducted with a job, who asked me what a pollinator was. I'm still shocked at that, which tells me that our work is certainly incomplete. And, you know, I bet all of you, like me, after this, we're going to go home. You're going to have a comfortable home, pretty yard, comfortable environment. You've got food in your pantry, your refrigerator, whatever. How many of us take that for granted? Well, thank you, Mark. If we did not have a bee, lots of bees, a lot of this stuff wouldn't be there. And we have the all-American dream of the beautiful lawn. Well, we don't discourage that, but we encourage other uses for lawns. So that's also part of what we do. Now, you all know that the Environmental Advisory Committee was created first to advise you all, study needs that promote our sustainability plan. After several years, it was obvious that we needed some people to do things, so the Green Team was created. I believe we're now in our 7th year. And in that time, we've been doing the things that often people forget about. They take for granted, like that food. Where does that come from? So we work with the Bowie Gardens Club and help them with their garden for food, the food garden. And actually it's on our Habitat tour this year. We have set up literature in the back, and please stop and take some of this so you know when our tours are. We really welcome your presence. It means an awful lot to our public when they see public officials who they elected actually supporting these kinds of activities. You know, we're not always the sexiest topic, according to many people, but we're the most vital. We're the basics. We provide the food, shelter, and whatever, which is also a metaphor for me, the bee. You know, if you don't give me a place to come, I'm not going to have a place to come. And if I don't have a place to come, you may not have food, because it's because of me. I will tell you, that person I mentioned earlier who didn't know what a pollinator was, I asked the person if they like to eat. I'm keeping it neutral and saying they said yes. And I said, well, if you don't have me, the bee, you're not necessarily going to have something good to eat. So, to the slides. These are examples of, on the left, this is creating a pollinator garden behind the senior center, which was created a year ago. It is on our tour this year, so people can see what you can do in a small space. The cake in the middle, which was done by BJ's and is rather outstanding, was several years ago when the city of Bowie was recognized by the National Wildlife Federation as the 95th certified habitat city in the country. That was pretty cool. And there's a pretty flower. Wrong. Here we are. So, who we are. Volunteers, there are 12 of us on our executive committee, and there are probably about up to 40 more individuals who help us with our various efforts. You can see the names of the people, and in fact, right here in our audience in the back are members of that executive committee. They have on our green Bowie t-shirts. And on the right, you will see the list of the volunteer opportunities. As you know, our executive committee is composed of subgroups, and those subgroups are the worker bees who are actually doing what you're hearing about in our city. We'll always recruit volunteers. In fact, at Bowie Fest, we had a great turnout and probably recruited more volunteers than we have in quite a while. Now, our mission, I'm not going to read it. It's one of those things that says we're the doers and we're the action, yes, with words. Somebody's saying action, not words, but we have words. And these are just pictures of our different volunteers. You'll notice Maddie Bizerto up there. This was at a health fair several years ago. This was before Maddie joined the staff of the city. She was the previous Green Team chair. And her very good green-minded and very good energy conscious is now working for all of us as a city employee. These are different events that have been hosted by our Green Team over time. And if you go to the Bowie Playhouse, you walk down that alleyway, as I'll call it, if you don't even enter White Marsh Woods, but you may notice the trees looking like what you see in that picture. They look girdled or stripped. That's that horrible English ivy that Mr. Levitt thought was a real good deal when it was all planted ever so long ago. But what that English ivy does, it has no value in our natural system. It is not a native plant. And what it does is it embeds its roots into those trees and kills them. So our weed warriors, part of Linda Cooper, who's back here, her natural resource team, they are in charge of organizing groups to remove that ivy. And on the left, that, if I can work it, is one of the 3 big signs that now display proudly our certification as a National Wildlife City. There are plenty of other places that we've been involved in. The month of April is our month. It's Earth Month. Used to be Earth Day, but we're doing Earth Month. So there are activities with the Lions for Bowie Green Expo, and we're really a very collaborative group, planning with the EAC, but also working directly with the public through such groups as the Lions Club and the Garden Club. Now, oh dear, I see something familiar up there. This was an opportunity at Bowie Green Expo to introduce our award winner this year of our Green Bowie Citizen. This is Howard Moline, who has single-handedly maintained on the east side of northbound 197. If you notice all those gardens between where there's a Shell station, you go beyond the post office and there's a Shell station, all along the right is a garden area, not to be taken for granted. That man has done that for all these years, and so we awarded him that. You will notice that on the right is an invitation to visit a number of sites that we have this year on June 23rd to see what people are doing, give you ideas on what you can do as well. We've also added on June 16th, Saturday, it's a tour of 5 different locations of showing 5 different ways to compost, because you know within the city now there are neighborhoods that are actually taking part in a trial to compost and hopefully to have less trash and also have people create their own healthy soil. That's another thing that we do. And it goes on and on. I know I was told this should be short. So here are some more pictures of us. Some of our folks, Linda in the back, and Michelle Balf, who was in charge of the art show and concert that we've done. They got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to be on Channel 4 News, which was recently at Bowie Town Center. And then you can see other events, some good remains from our weed warrior working. And at the bottom, we also, with the Garden Club, maintain the planters in front of the library. And they're filled with herbs, and the intent is that people can come and take a bunch home to use in their own cooking. So, our biggest thing is to support the sustainability plan. We've been recognized in the state of Maryland as, in fact, Dr. Trouth, we were down there together a couple of years ago when Bowie was honored as the most successful sustainable town, #1 in the state of Maryland. And we continue to do that through all of our little worker bees. So I would like to say a couple of things, and it has to do with education. It is vital that we continue to educate our public. So when they go to the store and they have a choice of healthy food versus not, that they understand that. We do this best in the schools. If you get the attention of an elementary school student, they'll bug the heck out of their parents. And that's really our best way to go about education. So through our Green Schools program, we do forums and workshops this fall, thanks to you all giving us the money. We're going to have a workshop for our schools to teach them how to write grants for significant things. You know, the schools are a bit of a mess, and until all of that flushes out, we want to be able to help our schools do some really good stuff, like build a greenhouse, more than just plant a garden kind of thing. So we're very thankful for that. I also want to say that we offer students in the system for their learning hours. We try to include opportunities in almost everything we do so students can be engaged and work directly with us. I know there's I believe a scout in the audience who's here working on a badge. We actually, through the Green Team, have one of our members, Howard, back here, who is working with scouts to promote green projects that they can get badges for, that we can offer our services. We may not have the answers, but we can find them. And you all have been very helpful with that as well. So, what else do I want to say? So, you know what a pollinator is. Just shake your head. Yes. If I turned around, are they shaking their heads? Are you? Okay, because if not, I be after you. So, thank you so much. I welcome questions, and certainly if you see something you think we should do, and I know I bugged Michael, that when and if this ice arena comes to be, that we're gonna make that a really green place, and all the development that goes on, you've got to consider the bees. Otherwise, it's not gonna go on. So thank you for your time, and
Well, thank you. Do we have questions of our guests?
what's that?
Mr. Stiff?
Sue,
Yes, Michael.
much like the bumblebee, you are one of the most persistent and colorful people in this whole city, and I thank you for your continued service and all the efforts that you put in, and the whole green team. And some of the most active residents we have are in that
Thank
group.
you.
For better and for
them, I
worse.
appreciate that as
So,
well.
thank you.
Now, as an educator, former school counselor, sometimes you just have to do what you got to do to get attention. And if it takes a bee costume, I'll do it. So thank you, Michael, for
working.
that.
Thank you, Sue.
Mr.
You're
Wolfley?
welcome. Questions?
Thank you. First of all, thanks for coming out, and thank you for all the incredible work that you and your team do. It is a truly dedicated group of people, and you really magnify your impact on the community with your outreach efforts. You get a lot of people engaged, and that it's absolutely fantastic to see. And I'll say, just as part of a recruiting effort here for you, that it's also quite rewarding as a participant in this, in that process. So if anybody's interested in getting involved, not that I think there's a hockey game going on, so I'm not sure there are too many people watching at the moment, but
More than
in
likely,
case someone,
that's all right.
in case someone was to come back and watch the recorded program, I'd like to encourage them to participate. I think there have been wonderful things that we've done in collaboration, city, everything, the garden club and so forth, and I've made use of the compost bins and a few other things.
Recycling lawnmowers.
Oh, yes,
Trees, plant a tree.
Absolutely.
Would you all help us convince people in this city to not rake their leaves to the curb, to rake them back underneath plants, to teach them that the leaves are the food for the trees? That's a huge piece of education that we're working on.
It's a
Thank you,
good,
DeFore. I
it's
had
a
to
good,
say-
it's a good mulch.
It's the mulch.
That's
Think
it
of the
is.
woods.
Absolutely.
Nobody
Natural.
feeds those trees. They have to feed themselves.
Absolutely. It's a lot easier than hauling them down. How about that,
Yes.
Nancy? But anyway, and the Monarch Way Station is fantastic out back here. I've enjoyed that on a number of occasions. I've tried on my own property, but I only managed to get a small percentage of my pollinator native plants to grow.
I know where to get you some help.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
yes, that Monarch Way Station will also be on our Habitat tour this year.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Mr. Carter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, my friend Sue, for coming out this evening. Sue is, I have to say this publicly, I've said it to her privately, but she's one of my favorite residents here in the city of Bowie, and I thank you again for sharing this report to us this evening.
You're welcome.
With us this evening. I want to remind myself to connect you with some of the residents over at both Pin Oak and Evergreen. Those residents are actually wanting to put together somewhat of a natural pond or garden area for bees, for meditation and things. They have a pretty nice sized lot behind the building that actually would be conducive for such a project.
If you have more specifics, just please share them.
I
and
will.
we'll
I
see
will
what we
share
can
that
do.
with you. And then, two, I wanted to say, I don't know how many people are familiar. I know we're watching, people are at home watching, perhaps not. But this Netflix program called Black Mirror. And Black Mirror spoke of, you're familiar, you guys, okay, great. See, how about you guys? Okay. Mike?
Silent Spring.
Okay. Well, and there's this, it's a series on Netflix, Black Mirror, and it's one episode that geared about killer bees. You guys remember that? And how the bee population actually died, and then years later followed by human population. Because as you mentioned, bees are the pollinators. Without the pollinators, there's no food. So, but in this series, they adopted some sort of, built some sort of computerized bee. But the bee, this is long story short. But it was just, I didn't know a lot.
Dress up a drone.
Well, yeah, and the bees, and then they programmed to do the pollinating. But later on the bees went against Haywire and went against the people. Oh, okay, I can go on and on. But check out Netflix's Black Mirror and the Killer Bee episode. But Sue, you educated me in the past about some things, and as far as nature and the environment. And I agree, we have to be concerned about our environment. It is our number one, well, basically it's our only home. And without it, it's done. So one, I thank you and the Green Team, all of you for coming out this evening. And my buddy in the back, Larry, good to see you again, good to see you. And all of you guys. So if I can be of any service, definitely reach out, but I'll connect you to those individuals at both Evergreen and the Pin Oak communities, okay?
Thank you.
No, thank you, Sue. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Dr. Trout?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Sue. Thank you so much. Thank you for educating us and bringing us up to date with a lot of pertinent and great information. One thing I am going to ask of you, and this is just a suggestion. You gave us a real good tip tonight about how you should rake your leaves.
Yes.
Do you put those tips in the spotlight?
No, but
Let's
that's
do
a
that.
good point. Okay,
Thank you.
I think we could do that. Thank you.
Okay, let's do that. All right?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Glass?
Thank you so much, Sue, for everything that you do and your entire team. This is actually one of the most exciting presentations I've heard, especially the pollinators and how much we need them. And it's not just the bees, it's also the hummingbirds,
The
birds,
butterflies, the
butterflies. And even though I live in an apartment, what I do every spring is try to plant as many flowers along, one, because it's nice to just sit out, and it's also good for nerves to tend to the flowers, but I also love to see the baby birds being born or hatched on my balcony, but also the butterflies that come and the hummingbirds, and I specifically look for those plants. So pollination is so key, and I think also something that needs to be said, we want not just bees or pollinators throughout the world, the country, or the county, but also specific to Bowie, because the honey that they produce, if it's locally sourced, can help prevent allergies or bring down the effects of allergies, which I
Yes.
hope we have some honey at the Bowie market on Sundays.
Yes.
So, and I also just wanted to say I didn't know about the herbs at the library, but that is an amazing, that's so amazing, and I feel like we should think about doing that at other places within the city and other neighborhoods.
Okay.
And
We'll work with the garden club too. because that's-
Definitely.
We do those things well together.
I love that, and I think I want to become a member of the garden club.
Well, please do. I can help you with that too.
Definitely. And then I wanted to find out, it says you do the English ivy removal 6 times a year. When's the next?
This coming Saturday,
This
which is
Saturday.
the final day.
Okay.
If you are interested in joining, please contact Ashley Armentrout, because we do have a limit. It has to do with the amount of tools that we have.
Okay.
It's 9 to 12, I believe, at White Marsh Park.
Okay,
But
perfect.
contact Ashley.
Okay.
And all of you at home, if you're interested, contact Ashley as well. We usually stop them because it gets really hot.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. And
It's just like this Wednesday is our final Walk Wednesday. It's another effort to promote wellness in the city. And this is a terrible thing not to end on, but to put in there. You may know that Prince George's County is the highest percentage of diabetes in the country. Country. So that's another thing that we look at as a result of what we do.
So, again, I just wanted to say thank you, and thanks so much for coming
You're
out,
welcome.
and everyone else that came.
Well, thank you very much, ma'am, not only for what you do, but for solving the eternal Shakespearean question,
We be trying
to be or not to be.
to be. I can't top it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for what you do. Okay. Okay. Goody room. All right, we've got a couple items that we took off the consent agenda. First one is item F, Resolution R3618, bid proposal for White Marsh. I think, Mr. Wolfley, you had a question about that?
Apologize, all of a sudden got something stuck in my throat. Can you speak to a little bit about where where we stand with this, the nature of the cost increase? We went up 600,000. That represents about a 25-30% increase in the overall expenditure anticipated. And are there any other alternatives in terms of managing the scope of the project as opposed to moving forward with an increased price?
Well, initially, when we looked at the estimates, the costs were more than we anticipated, and so we looked for ways to accomplish the mission, of course, and we moved some money from the Glen Ellen Pond project, and there was a poll that went out to City Council that approved this, maybe before you came on board. But we think we have an accurate estimate of the cost, and we think the bid there from Nestos is a pretty good bid. Otherwise, we won't be able to do all the things that we've listed. We could always remove something, but this is what was in the CIP, and that was the flight plan I was on.
I'm comfortable that the number that we have for the proposal is what the number is. The question is, are there alternatives that we could look at instead of just adding the money? Perhaps we can de-scope some of the project. And are there some thoughts as to what we could de-scope to stay within the budget as opposed to just putting in the extra 600?
Well, I don't think, we have not gone through an exercise of, but to use your term, de-scoping the project. I don't think we can reduce it by $600,000 and still accomplish the same thing. But George and his people took a really close look at the project, and this was the best effort from their perspective. If it's the council's wish that we could go back and take a second look at it and do the value engineering exercise on it, we can do it. But I don't believe we're gonna be able to accomplish the restroom, concessions, buildings, and to the point that we want to if we cut the project by $600,000. One of the problems that exists right now throughout the construction business, especially with the economy being so robust, is that many of the contracts the bids are coming in high throughout the industry, and maybe you all are aware of that already. That's a big concern of mine with regard to the ice rink. But we took a closer look at the project, looked at what we actually had to accomplish that was in the CIP and what was provided, and this is the best issue. But we can go back and take a look at it again. We may lose these bidders in the process, and I don't think that would not be my recommendation, but if given that direction, we'll do it.
Yeah, and this is, I think, something that's evolving in terms of at least my perspective on this, is that we are, to your point, there are increasing costs that we are seeing in the construction business in particular.
Oh, yes.
It's significant, and whether it's roads or park facilities or what have you,
Yes.
and we're spot on. I'm just concerned about the money that given the rising costs, whether or not we need to go back and evaluate whether we're willing to spend the money, and if there are any alternatives that could keep us in the same budget. Given where we are, where we just finished up with the last budget session, where we end up knocking off I think, couple $1 million in expenditures to maintain a flat tax rate, and with the understanding that in out years, and in particular the commitment that we made to having flat taxes as long as we can, certainly for the next round of budget, that we need to start looking, I think, at some of these expenditures and seeing if we can make an effort to whittle down some of the requirements as opposed to just green lighting on the increased costs. And so for that reason, that's what I wanted to to have a discussion about and see if there are any, if there's any interest in looking at the project again and seeing if there's any part that could be either deferred to when it's more fiscally viable for, more, construction costs go up and they come down, depending on the economy. There may be some parts of this that could be done later, or maybe there's some components that can be scaled down, and I would think that would be the best approach. But not to say that that's the final answer, it's just that the answer may come back that there is no way, but I do think we should probably take a closer look at what the options are. So that was my interest in taking this off of the consent agenda, was to have that discussion and see if there was any interest on the part of my colleagues here to have a further look at what the options are.
You're aware that $275,000 is in grants from the state, right? All of this isn't our.
Yes, but my assumption is that through $275,000 in grants from the state would still be $275,000 in grants from the state, and that any cost overrun is entirely borne by us, since we were going to be able to use those grants anyway.
Well, we were in compliance with the direction from the council. If the council wants to change the direction, then I'm open for direction in that respect, as to why we brought this bid and why we did what we did. We explained it in several months ago, and so I await any direction, any change in the mission from the council on this.
Thank you.
Given it.
Agreed.
Mr. Stead?
So this was for the restroom, the concession building, pedestrian plaza, and playground?
Yes.
All right. I was fine with the added money way back when, if any of my colleagues are willing to entertain changing the scope of the project to bring the cost down by the 25% or whatever. I'm happy to talk about that. But either way, I don't get the sense from any of my colleagues that we're interested in limiting the scope of the project, are we? I don't have my glasses on, so I can't actually tell if anyone's nodding or not. There we go. They're all stoic.
We've worked really hard on this project, and George and his team think we've got it nailed. Now, this will upgrade the park and make it a better facility for the folks who use the White Marsh Park, and
Yeah, I think.
help accomplish our CIP objectives, that's all.
I thought Dr. Trout had his hand up. I'm
Were you
sorry.
going to bank shot by me, or what?
Go.
No, I think, to that end, that's why we transferred some funds out of the Allen Pond thing. We've reduced the cost of the Allen Pond project and transferred some of that money over to this one to compensate for some of those changes. And I think that was good. I certainly don't have any problem, as this thing goes forward, to constantly review the process, because getting the best bang for the buck. Regarding, I don't know if we can separate this or not. The item on tonight's agenda was for this one project for the restroom concession and all. Did you want to separate that one out, or? What's in front of you is for a move to approve that particular phase of this process.
Right, there are two of them that go hand in hand. One is
Yeah.
one is accepting the bid, and if you can accept the bid, you need to get the money.
Yeah.
So they're part and parcel of each other.
Exactly.
I don't think there's any debate about that. And I don't misunderstand. I don't doubt the commitment of staff for and the hard work that they've done in the design, and I think that everyone is soldiered on in the direction that they were given. It's the question of when the answer comes back and here's what the bottom line cost is. To me, I look at it and go like, ouch, that's $600,000. That's 25-30% of the project cost. And to me, that's the issue, not whether or not it was executed properly or whether there's any other questions about it. And so that's why I have concerns about it and would, not want to move forward without another
One of the
look.
challenges we've had in this particular project is most of the components are rather substantial. And I guess it's hard to kind of take a piece of one component out or to defer a component, like as you say, one kind of morphs into the other. And like I say, I know we have taken money out of other projects and deferred projects, for example, at Allen Bond, in order to, to keep this one moving forward. But I'm open to moving forward with this and instructing staff just to continue to monitor it. If they come up with an idea you know, that looks like it's somewhere where we can shave some costs off or defer a component for it, but I certainly don't have a problem with that.
Well, I don't think there'd be any, once the contract is
Yeah.
let, I mean, there's no reviewing going back, and, I mean, the requirements are there, that's what they're gonna build to, that's what you have to hold them to, and that's what we'd expect to get. And that's, so from here on out, it's either pay the extra $600,000, and whether we moved money over from Allen Pond or not, this is still another $600,000. It's still more money than what we anticipated spending, and that's the only concern I have, is that, you know, I think we ought to start taking a closer look. That's.
Dr. Trapp?
If it's not prevailing, that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did hear that we're getting some money from the state. So I'm working under the auspices that the money derived from the state is probably a bond bill, which
Yes.
means you're talking about a shovel-ready project. You only have 2 years in order to take care of a bond bill. So the clock is ticking. You only have 2 years. If you don't spend the money within 2 years, you lose the bond bill. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that before you make any decisions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sev, did you have another question?
If there was no other discussion, I get the sense that council isn't interested in separating this out or going back to the drawing board, so I was happy to make a motion to proceed with the current project, if there was no other discussion.
Is there a second to that? Second. All right.
Okay.
All right, then, all right, so you move forward on the project.
Correct.
Moved and seconded. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6-1. Okay. Item H, amending the adopted budget for fiscal year 2017 to transfer amounts to pay for anticipated expenses. That's 0618. I think that was a question. Did you ask this one? Okay.
I mean, they're part and parcel of each other. I don't think there's any further, I don't have any further questions on it.
Okay.
I mean, we've covered it.
All right. Any questions on 0618? We have a motion on 0618?
Excuse me, Mayor, there's no motion on it tonight because this is just for introduction. The public hearing for that ordinance will be
okay.
at our June 18th meeting where the council
All
would
right,
adopt it.
My bad. All right. All right, so then the remaining one is item I, the letter to the planning board on reference to Melford. That would be, yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah. Mr. Saviat, I think you asked for that.
I just wanted the letter itself to be moved to new business for an actual vote. The DSP for infrastructure is pretty straightforward. It's consistent with what we've seen before. It doesn't treat with the actual townhomes themselves, but I just wanted to make sure that we actually had an opportunity to vote on it.
Okay. You have any questions for staff about it? All right. Is there a motion then on the detailed site plan letter for the townhouse development? Either you have a recommendation to move forward with the letter? Is there a motion? All right, moved by Mr. Marcos, second by Mr. Gardner. Any questions on the motion? All in favor? Opposed?
Nay.
All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-2. Is that all of them?
Yeah, that was all.
Oh, okay.
Hold on, there's one more.
Is there one more? Which one am I missing?
Letter J, the
J?
zoning rewrite.
Oh, item J, the letter to the county reference CB 13.
I'd like to,
Is there, go ahead. Mr.
Do you have a question?
no, I don't have a question.
Yeah. I'd like just a quick overview on where we stand with this letter in terms of the impact that it will have. And more specifically, if you could address whether or not there are any particular parcels in or adjacent to the city that will be affected by any of the zoning proposal changes, excuse me, any changes in the zoning regulations that are being spoken to. And if this is the opportunity to speak and to present something to the county about our concerns about the future zoning rules.
Good evening, Council. For the record, Joe Meinert, Planning Director. To answer your last question first, Councilman Wolfley, there are no property-specific zoning recommendations in this effort. CB 13 is simply to re-adopt new regulations to replace the current zoning ordinance. There will be a subsequent step which will involve rezoning of properties throughout the county, and we will certainly make you aware of that if and when the map becomes available. We'll have public hearings on it, and council will have a chance to take a position on anything that affects Bowie. With respect to the effort that's ongoing now, CB 13, which is the subject of this memo, is the main bill. It's the zoning ordinance rewrite that you've heard about. You've had multiple presentations over the past several years from Park and Planning staff. Council has written several letters, one in January of last year. We followed up with a staff letter in December reiterating some of the items. The work product has gone through a lot of changes over time as the staff and their consultant from Park and Planning are refining the recommendations. The point at which we're at now is county council work sessions, and so it's called the Committee of the Whole. The entire 9-member county council is now holding public meetings. They've held one public input session about 2 weeks ago, and there are 2 other public input sessions planned in July 10th, July 17th. And then a companion bill has to do with the subdivision regulations. And in fact, there was a work session of the committee this afternoon on the subdivision regulations. So it's now in the legislative process, both the subdivision regulations and the zoning ordinance rewrite. And what you have before you tonight is a recommendation from our staff that distills down to the current time what your recommendations should be to the county council as they go forward. And so we've listed those things. We've kind of filtered out previous comments that have been addressed or have been superseded by changes in the ordinance, and what you have left in the draft letter are those remaining policy considerations that council has told us to advance.
So you spoke to the issue of being all about the regulations. My concern is there's always this law of unintended consequences where we end up with changing the regulations that all of a sudden redefine what a zone might be and what's allowed in a zone. And my concern is I want to make sure that there isn't anything in there that would have an adverse impact on the city and the properties that may be susceptible to zoning changes or to existing zoning that might end up all of a sudden finding itself flipped from what we thought may have been at one point a low density, like residential use to a higher density, not by changing the zoning per se, but by changing the regulations around the zoning. And so I'm concerned about what opportunities are out there that we just don't know about, that these things can kind of slip through. And I don't know if there's been a review to take, to assess what's out there.
Well, we're looking at it, and you obviously can't know everything. We have council's concerns in mind about densities and looking at the new zoning districts, and they purposely created new zoning districts that would essentially mirror the zoning districts that we have. And so when they do the map amendment, there is likely to be not much of a change other than in name of the zone and sort of the planning techniques that go with that. So I think we're doing as well as we can in terms of monitoring the impact of the regulations on our community. But again, this is a work in progress, and these types of concerns are coming up every time there's a meeting. So
Right.
it's not something that we can forecast and know everything that's going to happen.
Agreed. Has there been any discussion or change to the MXT zone, what's allowable in that zone?
The current thinking is, and I think this is the way it's going to work out, is that they're calling they're creating a new zone called the Legacy MXT Zone, which would essentially grandfather the approved MXTs over time, and a property owner who has that zoning would also have the option of rezoning to a comparable zone under the new ordinance. So you could either keep the old approval that you have in place, or you could go for a comparable zone going through a rezoning process.
And if someone has a petition into, or started the paperwork for rezoning a piece of property under the current rules and current regulations, when this ordinance takes effect, do they have to go back to square one?
With the map amendment, it's something that if there's a pending application, that would be rolled in and considered as part of the new zones, because obviously if they've applied for a zone that doesn't exist anymore, the request would be wrapped into looking into what would be the most appropriate zone to accomplish what was intended in the application, and responding to whatever policies exist. So it doesn't mean you're automatically going to get what you ask for. It's going to have to go through a policy filter in order to determine what zone is appropriate.
In the case of the Jesuit property, where they have an application to change that zoning, if this new CB, whatever the number is on it, 13 goes forward, do they have to start over again? Or would they be grandfathered in terms of their request to change? And going even back to the to current status, I know it's kind of in limbo, but do they have to go back to square one and start over?
Well, there's a process. I think if you get to the point of the planning board considering the rezoning, I think that's at the point where it would then be rolled in and considered as part of that sectional map process. If it hasn't made it to that point, then there's really nothing. You would have to go back and start over.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's all I have for the moment.
Yeah, good. Mr. Sepp?
Hey, Mr. Minor, I appreciate your staff's extra work as the county's been going through this. I know it's generated quite a lot of hours for you guys. Just a couple quick things. The fences within required landscaping areas and the fences in utility easement areas, residential fence builders all across the city, thank you for your recommendations on that. On external street connectivity signs, this seems like such a silly and minor thing for me to even mention, but I see you're recommending that instead of them putting up a sign saying future street connection, we recommend them say possible street connection. Could I take it one step further and say that we would recommend they would put up a sign saying possible future street connection? Just to clarify, I don't know if that's too many words on the sign or what the case is, but that just sort of struck me. Is that something you guys be willing to look at? Cool. One other thing, in the general concerns that you list under your recommendations, it's noted that another overriding observation is that signage at new commercial developments along major roadways, and you specifically cite the Carrington development on 301, should be minimized to the extent possible. Are you referring to like future commercial signs for future development, or do you mean project awareness signs, or I think in the next sentence actually you mention project identification signs? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, and this was from council's guidance at one of the previous meetings. Council specifically talked about project identification signs and minimizing the size and the bulk of those signs, because the concern was that the corridor of 301, if not managed carefully, could really result in something that would be visually unattractive.
Okay. And so these are the signs that say like future potential project coming, future hotel coming, or are these like the actual like signs for like stuff is here?
It would be the main sign to the entrance to a commercial development. So
We're
it
on
might
the
have
same
the
page.
names of the
Okay.
stores or the name of the center.
Cool. So we're right on that, because the state regulates the, public hearing type signs, right?
Advisory signage, right?
Okay, cool. That's what I wanted to distinguish. Awesome. That answered my question. Thank you, Joe.
Are there any other questions regarding CB 13? Oh, Mr. Marcos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask staff if you could look at the Bowie Town Center Sears situation. I know we didn't make the list of closings this time, but I think it's only a matter of time with the state that they're in. And I believe the considered plan is multifamily units over there. I was going to ask the state the city if we could look at some different alternatives that might be available to help them with ideas. Thank you.
Will do.
Is there any other questions? All right, you have a recommendation to approve the letter. Is there a motion one way or the other? Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to move to approve letter to Prince George's County Council, CB 13-2018 zoning ordinance rewrite.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Marcos, any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Any opposed?
Everybody in favor? Okay, 7-0. Okay. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
I'd like to move to adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
Moved and seconded by Dr. Trout. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Good night, folks.